So I've been writing a fiction book. I've always wanted to do it. Been spending a lot of my time doing it. Some nights I'll do it for, 3 or 4 hours. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that I've been thinking about when I was doing it. One of the big things with writing is I chose to go with, a journalistic style of writing. And something that I've found, I have no one to proofread any of this for me or anything like that, so I've just been, doing it myself, sort of, is trying to balance the mixture of, I guess, like verbosity and describing things. Trying to balance that with making it believable in that journalistic style. If you go too overboard with descriptors and you go too overboard with painting a scene, it becomes unbelievable. If my character is writing something at night that occurred in the morning or in the day, and he is direct quoting people, he is describing the scene and painting a vivid picture, it becomes more unbelievable. But at the same time, if I keep everything terse and I don't describe the scene and I make it not verbose, it sort of is less interesting to read. At least I think it is. So I feel like you're constantly struggling with this balance and striking the right balance between, describing something and then keeping it believable and making it still feel like someone's journal. So that's one issue that I've noticed. And I think, considering how many words I've written, I think I have leaned too much into verbosity and too much into descriptors. And it's probably a little bit not so believable now. Because, if your character's busy in the day or whatever, him writing over 1,000 words in one day, it's not so believable, because how would he have the time to do that if he's busy? That's one issue. Another issue that I've noticed is, in real life, if you're writing a journal, you don't know what you're observing, what person you're talking to will be important later in whatever the climax of your journey, let's say, whatever the climax of your journey is. So, if you meet a certain character and you describe that character, well, there might be an expectation, from the reader that that character will be important in some way, when in reality that wouldn't really be the case, right? Like, if I meet someone in real life and I write about them, that person might not be important to me or to the main event down the line, but I would still write about them because I don't know that at the time. Whereas in a book, I think there's an expectation where if you write about something, you can probably get away with it some, introducing characters that aren't important, writing and describing characters that don't show up a lot or don't really have much of a role later. But there's sort of an expectation that if a character shows up, 3 or 4 times and you describe them and they have interactions with the main character, there's an expectation that that character will be important in the story. And butterfly. Obviously in real life that's not the case. So I've introduced characters and sort of put them on the back burner for quite a while. And some of the characters are probably not going to be important at all. And I think it does make the journal seem a little more realistic, but you constantly have to think about making it realistic versus making it coherent or tied together. So that's another issue with, I'm sort of writing things as I go along, and I'm sort of like flowing, I guess, like putting myself into the scenarios and writing what comes to my mind. I have a very rough idea for what I want to do, a very rough idea for how it might end or whatever, but not like super concrete. So that's another thing I feel like you have to think about. And I don't know, I've never really watched videos about writing. I don't know much about writing. I've just read, I used to read a lot more, but I've read, fiction books, and I've enjoyed them all my life, and I've always wanted to write something, so I started doing it. These are just some of the things that I've been thinking about. And another thing is, since I'm writing something that is alt history right now in theme, you have to constantly make sure that whatever you're writing makes believable sense. Because even though it's alt history and you can take liberties and change things, you don't want to remove it so much that it's not believable at all. You want to change little things here and there, at least I do, to sort of change the course of how things go, but I don't want to make it completely unbelievable. And there's certain things that you have to watch out for, like, I'll give an example. One of my characters got introduced to another character, to a higher up character, but it didn't make sense that in this scenario that my character would meet with this other character first, because he wasn't as high ranking. So I had to look into it to see what would make sense. If two high ranking people, let's just say captains of some description, were to meet each other, they would, met each other first. The captain of this ship would have gone to meet these people before my character would meet them. So I had to constantly do things like that, make sure they were believable. Certain historical figures that show up in my story, I have to make sure that their interactions, what they do, is believable. There's a lot of things to think about. I've always had a lot of respect for people who write fiction, good fiction especially, but even people that write hobbyist fiction, and maybe they don't make a lot of money from it, or maybe they mostly do it for themselves or whatever. I always respected that. And doing this myself, trying to write some of this, I have an even greater respect for it now, because there is so much that you have to think about. And I don't know, yeah, it's really been engrossing to me to do this, and part of me is glad that I started it and did it because I've always wanted to, but then part of me is not, because I feel like other things that I need to do to make a living are, taking more of being put more on the back burner than me writing this, which is just, I don't know if I'll ever make money off of it. I don't know if it's any good. And the part that I dread the most has to be the editing afterwards. So, I'm on first draft right now. I've got about 25,000 words. The idea of editing it is scary. I have to go through, see things that I wrote that in the moment that I thought would work and I really liked, decide if they're to stick around or be removed or altered. And I feel like whatever I end up changing and editing, I'm going to constantly second guess and wonder, did that really deserve to be changed? Should I have changed that? Should I have changed this? It's a lot to think about, but I don't know. Maybe, in a few months or a year, I'll finish what I'm doing and self-publish it. But the idea of self-publishing something like that you put a lot of work into, put your heart into, that you like, and having it, be criticized by people is a little bit scary, because, obviously I'm biased. I think the subject matter is interesting. I think the premise is interesting, but who knows if other people will feel that way. And who knows if I even have the right prose and the right capability to even do this. So, I don't know. A little weird video, just kind of rambly. I wanted to talk about this, so I don't really know if it fits what I've I've been making on this channel so far, but I don't know, we'll see. Not that many people watch these videos anyway, so if anything, it's just kind of for me personally to talk about it to someone, because I don't really have anyone who talk about it with. I'm not letting anybody read it or anything like that, so I don't know, we'll see where it goes. And thank you for watching if you listen to this whole rambling nonsense.